Now, of course, ever since that moment, just over a year ago, when Boris Johnson went to Lyd Airport in Kent to announce the Rwanda policy, the debate has gone back and forth repeatedly. There are many in the House of Lords who think the idea is appalling. It is said that King Charles, albeit before he was king, was appalled by the idea too. And of course, we have our friends in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, who, when that plane was actually on the runway and about to go, stopped it from going. Well, today, the government's been in the High Court and it has lost. It has lost. It's been ruled that it is, in fact, unlawful to send people to Rwanda. I mean, the whole thing is awful. This was the reaction of the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, in the House of Commons this afternoon.
Our bill is absolutely essential as an element in fixing this problem. It will allow us to detain and remove those who arrive here illegally. The problem is out of control. 45,000 people arrived here illegally last year. It's costing the British taxpayer £6 million a day in hotel accommodation. That is why the British people want us to fix this problem. The system is rigged against them, and that's why we're doing everything within our power to fix the system, change our laws and stop the boats.
Well, the government could go on saying these things. I have to say, the day Rwanda was announced, and the newspapers were full of it, the government have finally found a solution to the cross-border, the cross-channel problem. And yes, of course, if people were being sent to Rwanda, that would be a huge disincentive to pay your £3,500 or euros, whatever it may be, to a trafficker to bring you across the channel in a rubber dinghy. So far, we've spent over 140 million quid on the Rwanda plan, and not one single person has gone. We are still subject to judgments from the European Court of Human Rights, despite the fact we voted for Brexit, and I don't think we should be subject to that court in any way at all. And we're still being told by the international community and all its friends that the 1951 Convention on refugee status stands today. But of course, it was designed in very different times. But the British judiciary, the British House of Lords, who are doing their best to block legislation right now, seem to be huge barriers for the government. Tony Smith is the former Director General of UK Border Force and now Managing Director of Fatinas Global, a global border security consultant. Well, are you surprised by this judgment?
A little bit, Nigel. I was a little more hopeful. It was a majority, 2-1. And I think the government won most things. Just this question of whether or not, if someone gets to Rwanda, the Rwandans are going to send them back to a country where they might be persecuted. That's what two of the judges were concerned about. So, yeah, the Home Office has lost, and looks like we're on our way to the Supreme Court next, Nigel.
Yes, I mean, they will be given leave to appeal, I'm sure they will. So we go to the Supreme Court, 6 more months go by, another 20,000 cross the English Channel, or whatever it may be. I mean, let's be honest about this. Despite all the tough talk from the government, we are nowhere nearer to dealing with this problem at all, are we?
Well, we were close if we had a one today, Nigel, and I said to you last time I came on your show that I thought we were ready. Actually, I think the Home Office is ready. We've got people, we've got planes, we've got capabilities operationally to remove people to Rwanda, but the courts won't let us, as you know very well. And, you know, we tried this last year, didn't we? April 22, this first started, Nigel, where, you know, we said, let's get some people ready to go to Rwanda. That went through the courts. We had injunctions, ECHR injunctions to stop it.
Yeah. And
now we're still struggling with the... And I said to you before, Nigel, you know, these judicial interventions have really interfered with the UK immigration and removals policy for a long, long time now, and it continues to be the case. And we can't put the Home Secretary in contempt of court. We have to act within the law, but the law continues to wind its way through these very, very long processes. And in the meantime, as you say, Nigel, that message is going to get across the channel, and people are going to know full well that if they can get in a boat, get into British territorial waters, then they're not likely to be sent to Rwanda, are they? And yes, the only ones we've really been able to send back have been the Albanians. And I do fear now that you were right. Your predictions were right. You know, it was the weather. It has now opened up again. We're still slightly down on last year, but I do really worry it's going to take a long, long time now. That message will get across, and I think we could well be seeing a rise in intake again as a result of this.
Oh, we will be. I have no doubt about it. Now, there was a man a few years ago down in Australia who decided to hell with international law, to hell with, as he saw it, all the do-gooders and all those people who were fake humanitarians. And he just said, you know what? We're going to put the boats under tow. We're going to tow them back to Indonesia. And we don't actually care what the international courts think. We don't give a damn what the UN have to say. We don't care about what most Australian media is going to say. And they just towed the boats back to Indonesia. And you know what happened? A really funny thing happened. The boats stopped coming. The drowning stopped. And actually, ever since that moment 10 years ago, they haven't had a problem. Why don't the British government just simply use the Royal Marines and put people back on the beaches of France?
Well, because the French aren't going to be very happy about that, Nigel. That breaches agreements with the French, and they have done a lot of work with the French. There are things that could be done, as I've said to you before, in terms of agreements with the French. And, the Australians, actually, they were operating on the high seas, not in the contiguous zone. So it was slightly different, but they did get the Indonesians to agree to take people back. We have not been able to secure that agreement with the French, and we cannot operate in their territorial waters. So without some form of political agreement, we simply don't have the capacity, the legal authorities, to tow people into French beaches. We could have joint patrols, we could do all kinds of things under international law, Nigel, but that demands a political agreement. And I've said to you, the border force has to operate within the laws and within the powers and authorities that it has. It does not have the powers or the authorities to operate in French territorial waters or to tow people back to France without French agreement. And I'm afraid that's the operational situation we find ourselves in right now.
Yeah, no, from the perspective of border force, I completely and utterly get that. But I want to make you a promise, Tony. There will be no agreement with France. It doesn't matter how many hundreds of millions we give them. There will be no agreement with France because the French won't be allowed to have that agreement because Brussels will say no. This is up to us to do because we are operating, in theory, a common EU asylum policy. I honestly don't see, unless we take really bold action that, breaches international law in all sorts of ways, I just don't see a solution.
Well, that's why Rwanda was so important, Nigel, because it didn't demand an agreement with France. We did have an agreement with Rwanda. A lot of time and effort's gone into that agreement. And actually, there was no earthly reason other than its judicial processes as to why we could not. I don't think people would be harmed in Rwanda. There's all kinds of evidence it's a safe country. They're housing very many refugees already under the auspices of UNHCR. Yeah. But you're always going to be able to find one potential slight risk in anything you look at. And I think that's really, the courts are being really, really cautious. I've got to be careful what I say because actually, we have to respect the rule of law. This is the Court of Appeal in the United Kingdom have come to a considered judgment. All the government can do is to continue to press on and take this to the higher court, to the Supreme Court, and try and win their case and get Rwanda going because they've absolutely bet their boots on that, Nigel.
We will await the Supreme Court judgment. Tony, thank you as ever for joining me on the programme.